Russia gives us their own version of what peace would look like and how we could end the war in Ukraine. And I'll give you the details on that. Also, you could be eating or drinking a 0-calorie sweetener, and you might not even know about it, that has just been linked to heart attacks and strokes. And it's not even just a little bit of a risk of heart attacks or strokes. That's right. And I'll give you the details of all of that here in this video. So let's jump right in. Thank you so much for liking these videos if you appreciate them. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe down below so you don't miss out on new videos here on our YouTube channel that come out here every day. And click the bell icon afterwards so you don't miss out. Here we go. Okay, so Russia has shot down China's peace plan for the Ukraine war. And Russia basically said, yeah, we don't like China's peace plan. We're going to come up with our own peace plan. What do you think it looks like? Russia lays out peace negotiation terms that they say, quote, cannot be ignored. Well, here's what they say cannot be ignored. And I'll give you an idea of what, well, I'll give you you can guess what it looks like down below in the comments here. Yeah. Dmitry Peskov, Russian President Vladimir Putin's press secretary, spoke with reporters on Tuesday about potential peace talks with Ukraine and specified a few conditions that are non-negotiable for Russia. That's the key word here, non-negotiable for Russia. Remember that. Quote, there are certain realities that have already become domestic in Russia. I mean, the new Russian territories, Peskov said. According to the Russian state-controlled media outlet TASS, there is the Constitution of the Russian Federation, which cannot be ignored by anyone, and which the Russian side will never be able to give up. That's a quote. He continued on, quote, these are very important realities, and there are also certain goals of the Russian Federation, which she performs during the SVO, or Special Military Operation. Since Putin launched the invasion of Ukraine over a year ago, Russian officials have remained firm that Crimea, which Putin basically just took over in 2014, 9 years ago, from Ukraine, must remain part of its nation in any future peace talks. That's number one. So Crimea must remain part of Russia, non-negotiable. In addition, the Kremlin maintains that the 4 additional territories it illegitimately annexed from Ukraine this past September must also be recognized as Russian. This is a really big deal here because, well, first of all, as you can see here, the United Nations, which is basically the world, the entire world, right, took a vote on whether this election in these 4 regions of Ukraine that Russia's so-called referendums vote were legal in these 4 regions in eastern Ukraine were legal. And the world voted on this, okay? And here's what the world voted, okay? 143 countries in the world voted and said that the election was illegal. Only 5 countries, well, Russia and 4 other countries, voted and said the election was legal. And 35 countries basically abstained from the vote, including China. Yeah. The only countries that voted with Russia were Belarus, which is basically Russia's puppet, North Korea, Nicaragua, Russia, and Syria. That's it. Out of all of the world, that's all who voted that these elections were legitimate. And 143 voted and said, no, it's not a legitimate election. Here's the other big problem with this. Meanwhile, Ukraine has said that any peace deal must invalidate the 4 recent annexations and that Crimea must be considered part of Ukraine again. Now, maybe the Crimea thing could be negotiated on, maybe. But the 4 regions that Russia just took over, which they don't even control a lot of right now, Ukraine has taken back a large portion of these regions for the moment. Okay, Russia's launching a new initiative with 300,000 to 500,000 people. Okay, but Ukraine has largely controlled a lot of it right now. Okay, the surprise attack is largely over, right? I mean, we're in year 2 of this, and Ukraine has pushed back and taken a lot of this land back. Okay, Russia doesn't even control a lot of this land anymore. Okay, but Russia wants to claim that it's theirs so that they can, take the oil out of the ground and tax these people and claim money and get all the good stuff out of it, right? Ukraine's not going to go for that. So this is what Russia's peace deal is. Claim the land, claim the oil, claim the money, claim all the resources out of the land, just like they did with Crimea. And Ukraine's not going to go for it. So this is the terms of peace for Russia is surrender your land, surrender your resources, and let us tax your people. And Ukraine's not going to go for it. So there's going to be war for a long time because this is Russia's version of peace. Surrender your land. Guys, let me know your thoughts on this because this is how crazy Russia is. We're going to invade your land, and our peace terms are surrender your land, and there's your peace. Don't forget here that Russia also recently said, if you watch my recent video, that they, on their Russian state TV, that they could nuke Yellowstone National Park in the United States. And they also recently said, here's the headline right here. You can look this up here, read the whole thing. I'm not going to go over the whole thing again here, but top Russian lawmakers threatened that Russia would reclaim Alaska as well, which we bought from them back in the 1800s. Now, Russia would try to do that, but the U.S. wouldn't let them, just like the Ukraine's not letting them. So, again, this is the type of stuff that Russia says all the time. They literally, I mean, just imagine the stuff that Russia's saying to their people. And we got it on videotape, all this type of stuff here. It's just absolutely unbelievable, the stuff that Russia says to their people and their lawmakers. And it's mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing. Meanwhile, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham says Biden administration's decision to withhold the F-16s from Ukraine is beyond disappointing. Interesting here. Here's what he says. Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican from South Carolina, called the Biden administration's decision to withhold the F-16 fighter jets from Ukraine beyond disappointing. President Biden's, quote, recent statement ruling out F-16 fighters for Ukraine in the short term based on advice from the Department of Defense is beyond disappointing, he said in a statement. It has been like pulling teeth with the administration to get every weapon system requested by Ukraine to the battlefield. Now, remember here that Lindsey Graham, whether you like him or hate him or don't care, he's not just a regular senator. He actually has combat experience. He has military service. He was in the United States Air Force, which is interesting because he's talking about jets here, okay? He was in the United States Air Force. He was active from 1982 to 1988. He was in the South Carolina Air National Guard Reserve. He was a colonel. He was also in the U.S. Air Force Judge Advocates General Corps. So you can see here, he's got several years, 1982 to 1988, 1989 to 1995, 1995 to 2015 as a colonel. So, I mean, again, whether you like him, hate him, or whatever, I mean, he's just not just a guy there talking. He's got actual, I mean, he was in the United States Air Force. Yeah. Lindsey Graham says there is massive bipartisan support to provide Ukraine the fighter jets and start training them right now. Graham reiterated, saying, quote, ultimately, the responsibility of the decision falls on President Biden because the money has already been approved. So now it's President Biden decides where to spend the money that's already approved. Whenever you hear like, oh, they're releasing another $1 billion or something, it's not new money. It's just coming from the money that's already approved. Graham says he has the power to provide the jets, and he chose not to do the right thing. Denying one of the top requests to the Ukrainian military, F-16s and other NATO fighter aircraft, will only prolong the war and lead to even more death and destruction. Interesting. Republican Michael McCall from Texas, who's also been a key proponent of providing Kyiv with F-16s, similarly expressed frustration, saying, quote, when we slow walk and slow pace this thing, it drags out. And it's precisely what Putin wants. Now, honestly, I don't know if it's the cost of these things because they're pretty expensive, anywhere from like 35 to as high as 60, 70 million dollars each. Or if it's maybe we don't have enough of them, and you know they're not an old model of jet. You know, we kind of use them, so we've kind of been using up or sending over a lot of the kind of old models of what we have in our Air Force and tanks and all those type of things. We're kind of sending them the slightly older models, and we're replenishing them with newer models here, if that kind of makes sense here, which is actually not a bad thing for our military. It's like, hey, let's upgrade what we have, and the stuff that's like a little bit older, stuff we'll send to them. It's actually not a bad policy, right? Remember that, we've spent a little bit over $100 billion to them, but don't forget our military, we spend over $800 billion every single year for our military defense. That's even when we're not at war. So in comparison to what we've sent over to Ukraine, it's actually a small amount compared to, Russia being our number one biggest adversary militarily wise, probably. So you guys can let me know your thoughts here on this. And we've even had a lot of top Republicans like Mitch McConnell. I think it was his quote saying, this is an investment to protect America from one of our largest foes. Yeah. Also, some details here on a zero-calorie sweetener linked to heart attack and stroke based on a new study that you might be eating or drinking and not even knowing it. Take a listen to this.
Okay, so it's coffee time, right? Usually in the morning as you prepare your morning cup of coffee or tea, there's a serious new health concern about a popular zero-calorie sweetener. It's called erythritol. According to a new study, it has been linked to an increased risk of heart attack, stroke, even death. Doctors say it's an ingredient in some popular sweeteners and a range of foods, especially keto diet products. But it's hard to identify specific drinks or food that contain it. That's because, according to the study, there's no rule requiring the sweetener to be named on a product's label. Why is that? What's going on with this? Let's discuss now. Physician and assistant professor of health policy at Weill Cornell Medicine, I should say. It's where I go to the doctor, Dr. Drew Kular. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. He's also a contributor to The New Yorker. Appreciate you joining us. So, good morning.
Good morning.
What are the health concerns and why isn't this listed?
Yeah, so erythritol is an artificial sweetener that a lot of people use, and it's really gained popularity in the last couple of years. That's in part because it looks like sugar, it tastes like sugar, but it doesn't have any of the calories, and it doesn't affect our blood glucose levels. And so a lot of people with medical conditions like diabetes tend to use it. But this new study shows that people with higher levels of erythritol in their blood, they had much higher risk of stroke, heart attack, and other cardiac problems. And so there's real concern here. They think that the mechanism might be that it activates our platelets, and so it kind of causes our blood to clot, and that can cause all sorts of downstream problems.
And this ingredient, which is found in things like stevia, the degree of risk was not modest. Yeah, and by the way, this is called erythritol, Erythritol, and has been linked to blood clotting, stroke, heart attack, and death, according to a new study. The degree of risk was not modest, said Dr. Stanley Hazen, director of Center for Cardiovascular Diagnostics and Prevention at the Cleveland Clinic Lerner Research Institute. People with existing risk factors for heart disease, such as diabetes, were twice as likely to experience a heart attack or stroke if they had the highest level of erythritol in their blood, according to the study published Monday in the journal Nature Medicine. If your blood level of erythritol was in the top 25% compared to the bottom 25%, there was about a twofold higher risk for heart attack and stroke. It's on par with the strongest of cardiac risk factors like diabetes. And the paper revealed that erythritol appeared to be causing blood platelets to clot more readily, which can trigger a heart attack to the brain, triggering a stroke. So, for example, 30 grams was enough to make blood levels of erythritol go up 1,000-fold. It remained elevated above the threshold necessary to trigger and heighten clotting risk for the following 2 to 3 days. Just how much is 30 grams of erythritol? The equivalent of eating a pint of keto ice cream. Now, it doesn't mean that this is only in keto stuff. It's just an example here, and this is where this type of stuff is used in some products, so just keep that in mind. If you look at nutrition labels on stuff like keto ice cream, you'll see where it says, quote, like reducing sugar or sugar alcohol. These are terms for erythritol. You'll find a typical pint has somewhere between 26 and 45 grams of it. And this stuff is marketed to people with diabetes. And some of that has as high as 75 grams of erythritol. So if you eat anything like this or take stevia or anything, it's at least important for you to know about this. Again, that's all what I do here on my channel, is just keeping people informed of everything going on here in our country. So again, if you appreciate these videos, hit the like button, share this video with anybody that needs to hear about this, or on your social media platforms like Facebook or anything like that, and I'll keep you up to date here. Also, hopefully the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, makes it so this has to now be on food labels, or maybe even have a warning or something along those lines. So let me know your thoughts here. Make sure to click the subscribe button down below if you haven't yet, and click the bell icon so you don't miss out on new videos. Here's some videos you can watch next. You can click here what Russia just said about sending a nuke to the United States. That's right. And here is another video about millions of Americans, big details for Social Security, SSI, SSDI, Medicaid, and Medicare. Yeah. So click on one of those videos next. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.